The lobby smelled like lemon disinfectant and resignation. Melissa's heels clicked against the linoleum as she walked ahead, phone in hand, barely glancing back to see if I was following. "It's only for a little while," she said. Stopping at the reception desk, "They have 24-hour care-planned activities, a courtyard garden. You'll love it here, Mom." "Really?" I smiled faintly and nodded. Behind the desk, a young woman with a clipboard and too much mascara greeted me like I was checking in for a weekend retreat. Melissa handed over a folder of documents papers I hadn't read, only skimmed. I trusted her. "Room 218, the girl chirped. "End of the hall right by the window." Melissa leaned in, kissed my cheek quickly. "You'll be safe here," she whispered. "And I'll call. Promise." Then she was gone. No lingering glance, no backward wave. Just the swish of designer fabric and the sound of her SUV pulling away before I'd even unpacked. The room was small but clean, a twin bed with a floral spread, a wooden dresser, one chair by the window. I sat there most of the afternoon, listening to the hum of wheelchairs passing in the hallway. No one knocked. That night, I plugged in my phone, intending to call Judith, just to hear a familiar voice. But before I could dial, a notification lit up my screen. "Melissa Stein tagged you in a photo." I opened it. There she was, my daughter sitting poolside at the Grand Hawaiian Resort. Her husband, Eli, stood behind her, shirt unbuttoned, drink in hand. His parents flanked them both, beaming. Melissa wore a sun hat I gave her last Christmas. Caption, "Family first. Mahalo to the best in-laws for this surprise trip. So lucky to spend this week in paradise." I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone or scream. Instead, I clicked on my contact list, scrolled to Hopkins Tea, and pressed call. When Melissa was born, I was 26 and 2 semesters into my master's in library sciences. I had dreams of running my own archive, dusty ledgers, brittle manuscripts, silence. Nathan called it romantic nonsense, but he always said it with a smile. After Melissa, I never went back. One semester turned into a decade of carpools, bake sales, flu season, and parent-teacher nights. I didn't resent it. Not then. I loved being her mother. But love has its own quiet accounting. When she got into USC, I drained the last of Nathan's life insurance to cover tuition. She didn't know that. She thought the scholarship covered more than it did. She never asked. When she married Eli, I smiled through the ceremony, though I felt like a ghost in the front pew, polished but unseen. His family had money, presence. That old coastal entitlement you can't quite name, but you can feel in the way they hold their forks and pronounce La Jolla like it's theirs. They wanted to buy a house by the ocean. Eli's parents offered a loan. I sold my house in Savannah instead. "No mortgage," I said, handing them the check like a blessing. Melissa kissed my cheek and said, "You're the best mom." When the twins came, Avery and Max, I uprooted again. Moved to a small apartment 3 blocks from their school. Became the invisible scaffolding holding their schedule together. School pickups. Aftercare. Dentist visits. Sometimes I slept on the couch after bedtime stories because Melissa and Eli were out late at galas or business dinners. I thought I was earning something. Not gratitude exactly, just a place. And now, sitting alone in this sterile room with a call button clipped to my chest and my name sharpied onto a plastic cup, I began to wonder, was I ever anything more than convenient? At what point does giving stop looking like love and start feeling like erasure? "It's just for a few weeks," Mom Melissa had said, cupping her latte like it was a contract, "so you can rest. Recharge. Get some space that's yours, She said it kindly, the way people say things they've already decided. You mean a nursing home? I replied, folding my hands in my lap. She flinched. It's assisted living. You'll have your own room, privacy, meals, someone to help with meds. Eli's mom loved her place in Palm Springs. Eli's mom had a full-time caregiver and a wine fridge. I had arthritic knees and a Tupperware of reheated soup. Still, I agreed. I told myself it would be temporary. A rest stop, not a destination. The staff was polite, smiling, too cheerful. There was a bulletin board by the dining hall covered in colorful flyers, movie night, bingo chair, yoga. I'd never felt so aggressively scheduled. My room had a view of a cracked fountain and a bird bath no one filled. On the second day, I tried to walk the perimeter garden alone. Excuse me, Miss Carter. A nurse caught up to me. We just need you to sign out at the desk if you're going outside the property. Oh, I'm not going far. Just to the sidewalk. I'm sorry, it's for your safety. She smiled, but her fingers hovered near the walkie-talkie on her hip. Later that evening, I heard the click of the main door locking behind me as I returned from the common room. It was a soft sound, clean, final. Not unlike the one Melissa made when she folded my independence into a neat little favor and walked away. It started with a conversation I wasn't meant to overhear. Two aides were chatting near the nurse's station while I waited for my blood pressure check. The daughter of the new one in 218. Melissa something. She listed herself as financial guardian. Must be nice having that kind of control. The other one hummed. They're moving fast with those legal documents lately, especially when there's property involved. I blinked. Financial guardian Melissa had asked me to sign some basic medical paperwork the week before. I was tired, overwhelmed, and she'd handed me a pen with that efficient smile she always wore when something needed to be handled. Back in my room, I pulled out my little accordion folder, the one with my Social Security card bank statements and a list of passwords I still refused to store online. I dialed Mr. Hopkins, my lawyer, back in Savannah, and left a message. The next morning, I got a call back. Evelyn, he said, I've reviewed some recent filings. Melissa listed you as a co-signer on a secondary mortgage for a beachfront investment property in La Jolla. It went through 6 weeks ago. I held the phone like it might bite me. She said I agreed. She signed under power of attorney. I have a copy of your signature. My mouth went dry. I remembered that stack of papers, how I hadn't read them fully. My own name weaponized. Hopkins's voice softened. She also filed a financial proxy with a notary out here. It might hold if contested. I stood slowly, every joint stiff. Can you freeze everything I asked? Yes. He didn't hesitate. Accounts authorizations, property rights, everything within reach. I walked to the tiny window overlooking the parking lot. An older man in a wheelchair was feeding crackers to birds. Do it. Melissa had always known how to handle money. I just hadn't realized I was part of the portfolio. I didn't follow Melissa on Instagram, but I'd bookmarked her page years ago like a window I didn't dare open too often. That evening, after my call with Mr. Hopkins, I opened it. There she was in a wide-brimmed sun hat and white linen dress standing on a balcony overlooking an endless turquoise ocean. The caption read, "Long overdue. So grateful for Eli's parents and this family time. Mom couldn't handle the flight, but she's in a safe place. Everyone wins." Ohana, Shamawi magic. I stared at the screen, heart thudding, not with pain, but with clarity. I scrolled down. A photo of her and Eli at a luau, arms around his parents. Leis draped over their shoulders. Tiki torches flamed in the background. The comments trickled in. So gorgeous, glad you convinced her to stay behind. You deserve this break. You do so much for your mom. I didn't respond. I didn't correct the narrative. Instead, I opened the drawer beside my bed and pulled out my travel wallet. Inside was my passport, my original birth certificate, and $200 in cash I'd tucked away last Christmas, the one Melissa forgot to come to. Then I opened my weather app. The forecast in Juneau was cold. Rain, likely. Perfect. I sat on the edge of the bed and zipped up my suitcase. This place wasn't my prison, but the people who put me here. That was a different story. The booking took less than 10 minutes. I used Melissa's old birthday gift, a prepaid Visa card meant for emergencies, only to reserve a single occupancy suite on an Alaskan cruise departing from San Diego in 3 days. Non-refundable. Balcony view. Room service included. It felt less like spending money and more like reclaiming breath. I waited until nightfall. The halls were quiet, and the evening bingo crowd had just finished their prize raffle. I slipped on my navy wool coat, the one with deep inside pockets. One held the phone, the other held my passport. Judy, a nurse I'd befriended over shared crossword puzzles and a mutual disdain for pudding cups, met me by the side door. "You sure about this?" she whispered, glancing toward the security camera. "Absolutely." She opened the door without another word. I hugged her briefly. "Thank you." "Don't come back unless it's as a guest," she said, winking. I took a cab to the airport motel I'd reserved, slept for 6 hours, then boarded the morning train heading west. It was the first ride in years I'd taken without someone waiting to pick me up. 2 days later, as the ship pulled away from the dock, I stood on my private balcony, wrapped in a blanket, tea steaming in my hand. The wind was sharp and honest. For the first time in decades, no one knew where I was. That's when the phone rang. Melissa. I let it ring once, twice, a third time. Her name blinked small and desperate. I sipped my tea and turned to face the open sea. She'd find out soon enough. Some people escape with sirens and spotlights. Others just book a window seat and don't leave a note. The voicemail came the next morning. Not a greeting. No "Hi, Mom." Just static, and then Melissa's voice tight, furious. "What did you do?" she hissed. "The credit cards aren't working. Eli's trying to close escrow, and the bank says your name's flagged. Did you freeze the accounts? Are you out of your mind?" A pause. A sharp exhale. "You're not answering your phone, so I hope you're listening. That house deal is time sensitive. If we lose the rate lock, it's on you. Call me back. Now." I didn't. By late afternoon, she called again. This time, I answered. I was in the ship's library, flipping through a weathered copy of A Room with a View. Fitting. "Why are you doing this?" she snapped. No hello, no preamble. "Do you have any idea what kind of mess you've made?" "I'm taking a break," I said calmly. "Just like you suggested. You froze everything without telling me." "I didn't think I needed to. I wasn't consulted when you used my signature either." "That was for your benefit," she said, voice rising. "You don't understand how these things work. Eli and I were—" I closed the book gently. "I understand perfectly, Melissa. You assumed I wouldn't notice." Silence. Then quieter, like a warning wrapped in pity. "You're going to regret this, Mom." I smiled at the sea through the window. I already regretted too much. I'm done with that. I hung up. Then I opened the voicemail app and deleted the message. Not out of spite, out of peace. Sometimes the sharpest revenge doesn't come with fireworks, just clean paperwork and a well-timed pause. "We'll take care of you forever, Mom." Melissa said it the year Nathan died. We were sitting on my porch in Savannah, the sweet tea sweating on the table between us, her hands clasped over mine like a solemn oath. You gave everything for me. When the time comes, I'll be there. I'd believed her, just like I believed her when she called me crying during her divorce from her first husband, Mitch. I flew across the country with a casserole in one hand and my retirement savings in the other. She slept for 3 days while I unpacked boxes and reassembled the broken pieces of her life. Just like I believed her when she couldn't get out of bed for 6 months after Max was born. I changed diapers, made frozen lasagna, learned how to swaddle again with stiff fingers and an aching hip. I was never the mother who kept score. But I remembered everything. She used to call me her anchor. Now I was a liability. She told the case manager at Brookside that I'd become forgetful, that I was showing signs of confusion. That's why they'd restricted my outdoor privileges. I passed their cognitive test with a perfect score. The nurse blinked in surprise. I smiled and said nothing. Because memory, true memory, is not a sign of decline. It's proof that I was there, that I saw, endured, and carried. And I remember every promise she made, and the exact moment she chose to break them. It began with a comment under Melissa's vacation post. Didn't your mom help you buy that house in La Jolla? Just one sentence nestled beneath a photo of her and Eli posing barefoot on the beach, matching linen outfits and champagne flutes raised to a Hawaiian sunset. She hadn't blocked me. Probably didn't think she needed to. I wasn't the kind to start drama or finish it for that matter. But the internet has its own memory. More comments followed. Wait. Didn't she move to help raise your kids? Hope your mom's enjoying her vacation too? Melissa didn't respond. But she didn't delete them, at least not immediately. That was her mistake. My goddaughter Lena saw the post. She'd always been observant, sharp, still lived in Portland working in nonprofit housing advocacy. We hadn't spoken in months, but she messaged me out of nowhere. Is this about you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. 2 days later, she wrote again. I shared your story. Anonymized, of course, with a journalist friend. They're doing a feature on elder financial exploitation. It's called When Elders Become Afterthoughts. I sat with those words. Reread them slowly. I wasn't named, but I didn't need to be. The story matched mine beat for beat. Southern mother signs over property, daughter leverages guardianship inheritance diverted into second homes and luxury trips. The details were broad. The truth was razor sharp. It spread. Blogs picked it up. Advocacy groups reposted it. Friends of Melissa, some who hadn't commented in years, began tagging her with side-eyed emojis and pointed questions. Not cool. Is this real? So, your mom's okay, right? Melissa deleted her Instagram by the weekend. I didn't gloat. I didn't respond to messages forwarded by distant relatives, ex-neighbors, or former PTA moms who suddenly remembered my number. I just watched the truth move through the world the way it always wants to, quietly, persistently, like water, finding every crack. Some stories don't need to be shouted. They just need to be seen. And I had lived long enough and quietly enough for mine to echo without ever raising my voice. We docked in Juneau just after dawn, the sky heavy with silver clouds that promised rain, but not quite sorrow. The ship's horn let out a low moan, and I stood on the balcony, watching the shoreline drift closer, like an old memory, familiar in shape, but distant in feeling. In town, the notary's office sat above a florist, the smell of pine and lilies wafting up through the vented floorboards. The woman at the front desk wore a thick cardigan and offered me a cup of weak coffee. I declined. Some things I've learned are better left untouched. The notary, Mr. Carlson, was younger than I expected, clean-shaven, quiet, efficient. He didn't ask questions when I slid the copy of my will across the table. "I'd like to revise this," I said. He nodded, opened a fresh document, and clicked his pen. "All right, let's begin with your executor." And so we rewrote everything. Melissa erased. Instead, the Savannah house would go to Hope Haven, the shelter for women and children that I'd volunteered at in the years after Nathan died. My personal savings, what remained of Nathan's pension, and the inheritance I once set aside for Melissa's future, was split between the local library in Savannah, a community scholarship fund for single mothers in Georgia, and Hope Haven's emergency relocation program. It wasn't vengeance. It was clarity. The law required me to sign in triplicate. Mr. Carlson watched me closely as I did. His gaze wasn't suspicious, just curious. "Are you sure you don't want to leave anything for family?" he asked gently. "I have," I said. "They're just not the people who share my blood." He nodded slowly and pressed the seal. That evening, I wired the deposit for a blue-painted cottage just outside of Yakuts, Oregon. 2 bedrooms, sloped roof chimney, still intact. There was a wraparound porch and the start of a vegetable garden someone once loved, but let go wild. It would take work, but it would be mine. No one would call it a facility. No one would knock before entering with a chart and a pill cup. That night, back on the ship, I sat beneath a blanket with the ocean wide and black beneath me. I didn't need Melissa to know. The message wasn't for her. It was for the girl I used to be, the one who gave everything believing it would be enough. Now she had a name on the deed, and a life that finally belonged to her. The fog settled over the Oregon coastline, like an old friend, gentle, familiar, and quiet. I stepped onto the porch with my lavender tea still warm and watched the mist blur the pine trees that lined the edge of my new yard. The cottage was small, but mine, the kind of place where the mail arrives slowly and the neighbors wave from a distance. Some days, no one comes by at all. I liked that. Harold the tabby I adopted from the local shelter lounged at my feet, belly up and snoring. I envied his certainty, his complete trust that the world wouldn't ask more of him than he was willing to give. The porch swing creaked in rhythm with the tide, and I wrapped the blanket tighter around my legs. A jar of dried rosemary sat on the railing beside me, clipped from the scraggly bush out back. My garden was beginning to take shape. Not because anyone needed it, but because I did. Inside, the kettle still whistled softly. A roast was in the slow cooker, filling the house with the scent of garlic and lemon. Then the phone buzzed. Melissa. Her name lit up the screen again. It had become a ritual every Tuesday morning, like clockwork. She'd started calling after the article went viral, after the will was changed, after silence became my only answer. I didn't pick up. Instead, I let it ring. Again and again. I knew what she wanted. Redemption. Explanation. A recentering of her story with me as a footnote. But I had stopped editing myself for her comfort. As the final ring faded into nothing, I leaned back in my chair, staring out into the fog. You taught me to disappear. I whispered the words barely louder than breath. I just learned to enjoy it. And I had. The piece wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with fireworks or courtroom victories. It came in cups of tea and quiet mornings, in the taste of food I cooked only for myself. Somewhere Melissa might still believe she could talk her way back in. But here on this porch with no audience to perform for, I'd already moved on. And finally, I was not just safe. I was free.